Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Toral Goradia. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Santor Technologies, and I am going to be your host today. Santor Technologies is a Microsoft Fabric featured partner specializing in data analytics and AI. We help organizations modernize their data platform and unlock real business value through AI driven insights. Our team has successfully implemented data and AI solutions across industries. We specialize in helping organizations migrate from data visualization tools such as Click, Tableau, BI tools such as Business Objects, and on cloud and on prem databases to Microsoft Fabric and Power BI using our proprietary Migrate to Fabric solution. I am thrilled to have here with me today two exceptional speakers, Dan Hughes and Prathamesh Sable. Dan, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Sure. Thank you. I'm co-founder of Claritee AI, and we focus on helping organizations adopt artificial intelligence through education, prototyping, application development, and also providing fractional leadership. Happy to be here. Thanks, Toral.
Thank you, Dan, for joining us today. Prathamesh?
Thanks, Toral. So I bring in over 17 years of experience into transforming businesses through data-driven operations. I've been a Microsoft certified professional working on the Microsoft technologies, specializing in data migrations, data architecture, data solutioning. In Santor, I head the Center of Excellence, which comprises of different areas such as Microsoft Fabric, Power BI, Power Platform, and also Copilot. Coming to my background, I'm a certified trainer, as I mentioned. I have a project manager, a certified scale agilist, and also TOGAF certified professional. That's it. That's from my end.
Great.
Happy to be here, Thor.
Great. Thank you, Prathamesh. Thank you, Dan. We are very excited to have you guys over here and share your insights on what it truly means to have AI-ready data and how to move from siloed data to a governed lake leveraging Microsoft Fabric. We'll also have a demo. Prathamesh, you're going to be showing us Microsoft Fabric, and we'll also be sharing a practical use case to give you an end-to-end picture. So please feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We will be addressing those during our Q&A session towards the end. And without a further ado, Dan, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sure. So one of the strategies we do with working with customers is really identifying processes and really looking at each function of the business where AI can be applied. And we've uncovered lots and lots of different use cases, and they can range from meeting transcriptions, where we want to organize all of our meeting transcriptions so that they can easily be retrieved. We've uncovered, obviously, everyone's heard about customer support chatbots and research and development chatbots and going out and doing research. But really what the common theme is, and it could also be chatting with your ERP data, which is another common one. But really the common theme is it's all about data. It always has been, and it continues to be. So what we're seeing is three applications: chatbots, workflows, and agents. And some of the examples that we're going to talk about later leverage one of these three. But really the challenge continues to be the disparate data sources that are in many, many forms. We have unstructured data, structured, and semi-structured. Like unstructured data, for instance, it's not only just PDF documents and Word documents and things with free text, but it's video files, emails, audio files, sensor data, website information. With the modern AI, this deep learning AI, we can actually go through videos and very easily extract information on what's actually happening, context aware within videos. And within emails now, we're within reach where we can load millions of receipts of emails from customers, and we can interpret that. So really, the data problem is not changing, and the idea of having quality data bad data in, bad data out, it's still a problem. So so I want to talk about that a little bit more. Can we go to the next slide? So this is an example of structured and unstructured data. On the left, we may have a conversation, which is put in sentences. In the middle, that data is turned into semi-structured, which we leverage a lot with Python applications in the AI world. And in some cases, we're even taking unstructured data and we're bringing structure to it by putting either metadata about it or parsing pieces of the data out into structured. But the beautiful thing in this new age with modern AI is AI leverages unstructured, semi-structured, and structured data. So no longer are we limited to just how we can analyze data. We can analyze data across sets. Can you go to the next slide? So here's an example of a meeting transcript. And in that meeting transcript is lots and lots of insights. You could have hundreds, thousands, even millions of pages of meeting transcripts as an example. But by coming up with metadata for that transcript information, like meeting date, who the organizer is, who the attendees are, the duration, who's talking the most, there's tons and tons of insight that can be extracted and leveraged from these meeting transcripts. So you could imagine saying, I want to know, the last 6 meetings I've had with Prathamesh. And during that time, what are some of the things we talked about? And how much time did I spend in meetings with him? There's so much rich insight that really wasn't really available prior to this new generative AI revolution. But it all requires data. These transcripts can be many thousands and thousands of words. So in this age, we have to have a good way of aggregating and organizing data into, even if it's just a data lake where we're placing and staging data, and then we can use it for downstream applications, whether it's for the chatbot or workflow or agents. So the key message here is it's more important than ever to have an aggregation, a place to store and stage and even transform your data. Next slide. So data engineering, this is where data engineering comes in. It's extremely important to do the work on the data prior to leveraging the AI. So for example, there is maybe categorization that you could do in the ingestion and transformation phase. Some people are thinking, well, let the AI handle categorizations or looking for certain groupings of the data, when really it's really better done on the data engineering side, and let the AI, in the case of, if we're passing it to an AI model, let the AI model do what it's really good at. And don't have it doing cleaning and standardizing and filtering and aggregating data when it's not necessary. So differentiating between what work is done on the data engineering side, meaning when you pull it into the cloud platform, the data platform, and you're manipulating and you're organizing it and cleaning it, there's a lot of work that can be done by that piece. Then when you hand it to the AI model to do its piece, it's going to perform a lot better. And then when we talk later at the use cases, this is pretty evident. So that's so differentiating between data engineering and knowing when you spend your time on prepping the data and how important that is something that we're going to talk about more. So next slide. So this kind of point that I just made about just separating the two and getting, the data engineering focusing on the pieces that are important. Next slide. Okay, so the benefit of a modern data platform, we used to call it data warehouses. We called it many names in the past. We tend to refer to it as a data platform now because we can have unstructured, structured. We can leverage the power of a data lake. We can leverage still dimensional modeling and things for more advanced warehousing capabilities. But really the modern platform, it gives us a unified foundation. it can make the process of moving data from its source into the platform very efficient. We can work with live data now. It's another benefit. We can stream the information, and then we can do a lot of orchestration where we can then pass it on to workflows and agents and really take advantage of that piece. And then finally, the beautiful thing about these data platforms is now you have AI powered assistants. So co-pilots and assistants are now embedded in tools like Fabric, where now it's actually helping you with development, it's helping you with maintenance of it. So the modern data platform is not the old data warehouse. There's definitely a different paradigm that we're developing under, and that's what Prathamesh is going to talk about next. So we'll get into more when we get to the use cases, but I want to at least introduce what we're seeing as we're working with customers, and happy to take questions along the way. But go, Prath.
Great. Thank you, Dan. We all understand that data is the fuel, right? And but how you structure and manage it determines your AI outcomes. So definitely, that has become so important. And now that we've covered the challenges of the disparate data sources and how it hinders AI applications, let's dive deeper into how Microsoft Fabric can address these issues. So I'm going to hand it over to Prathamesh. We would love to understand how Microsoft Fabric helps us overcome these challenges. And even if you can walk us through what are the data engineering best practices, that would be great. Yeah. Prathamesh, you are on mute actually. Yeah.
Can you let me know if you can
Yes,
hear me
we
now?
can hear you now, Prathamesh. Yeah.
All right, all right. Okay. All right. So thank you, Toral, for that. And I'm sorry for being on mute. So couple of things I wanted to really discuss here with everyone is, where Dan did actually mention a very important thing that, data is sitting there, but we really don't know how to do that. Or, we are earlier traditionally, we are using a lot of different siloed systems to gather data. But there's new data platforms that we have, out of which one is Microsoft Fabric. They have the capability to bring in the data from all these multiple systems together into one. That's why we call it as a unified platform. You can also bring in your data which is structured, unstructured. If you have data sitting in PDFs, you can bring that into a particular lake house. You can define structure on the data using warehouses. So that's where the entire architecture sits around it. You can always follow architecture which is pretty medallion from the bronze, silver to gold, which I'll cover in the upcoming slides. These new platforms really have a very huge capability of bringing real-time data in. So if you have data coming in from streaming data sets or Azure event logs, this is where real-time intelligence really plays a very crucial role by Kafka. uh, Now when you're also working on the data, you also need to ensure you need to have a security governance around it. That's where Microsoft Fabric provides you data around governance. You have Microsoft Purview, which is available with Microsoft Fabric to control your data. You can catalog your data as well. You can endorse your data and share it across with different users. One of the very important topics here is AI. So within Fabric, you have integration of products like Copilot, which will help you not only ask questions on your data, but also will help you write your data. Or if you want to write a Python script but you don't know how to do that, it will help you to do that. I'll show example of that during the demonstration as well. With Because the tool becomes unified altogether with different workloads, it becomes very cost effective. You can go ahead and estimate the cost in terms of resources that you want to use. You can turn on and turn off resources that you really want to use as a part of your costing as well. And because it's Microsoft, it sits under the entire Microsoft ecosystem, which makes it very, very easy for you to go ahead and collaborate with multiple people. So you can have you can share the reports with the team, you can share reports on SharePoint, you can cross share the reports within even the organization as well. So this whole data modernization with Microsoft Fabric, it is all future proof, that you have a lot of content available which you can really ready to use. That's where we have built on a lot of accelerators. These are really domain agnostic. We really don't need to reinvent the wheel again and again. It is just about making few changes to meta driven orchestration, and you are able to go ahead and reuse it again and again. So that's where it, you really are switching from a more traditional ecosystem to more of a modern ecosystem using Microsoft Fabric. Now, laying the tools of within the Microsoft Foundation, uh, it's very important that we understand these tools, because this is a very cohesive ecosystem for doing end-to-end analytics. So we have, Azure Data Lake Storage, where you can store your data in structured, unstructured data. You can bring that data into Microsoft Fabric, which is a unified SaaS platform for data engineering. You can also do data science on it. You can also do business intelligence on it. You can also leverage the data set using Azure AI Foundry. Uh, to do machine learning, or create chatbots on top of it. Specifically when it comes down to reporting, you already have Power BI, which is already existing in the market. It's one of the top leaders on Microsoft in terms of reporting, and you can also go ahead and integrate Power BI with your Microsoft Fabric data. I did speak about governance. That's where Microsoft Purview plays a very important role, where the organizations can go and manage the data. They can govern the data, which is across on-premises, different cloud or SaaS environments. The whole idea about Purview is to unify data governance and maximize the business value around it. Minimizing the compliance that you have around data, what data needs to be shared. Copilot is one of the areas where you can use native Copilot within Power BI to ask questions on the report. You can also get generative AI to create summaries out of it. And the next new thing that is Microsoft is introduced as a part of the Fabric conference in March, which is around data agents, where you can go and query the data and you can revert back in terms of SQL queries, and you can also have Power BI when you're creating reports. So your data and insights becomes really accessible, and all these areas becomes a foundation for Microsoft when you're working Microsoft Fabric. So what typically I'm going to show across is this is the typical Microsoft Fabric Medallion architecture, where on the left hand side you have the data sources. You can have data coming from blob storage, Excel file, CSV. You have data coming from databases. You can even bring real-time data via APIs. Orchestration within Microsoft Fabric is majorly handled via data flows, data pipelines, which is specially used for ingesting data. If you have on-premises data, you can also leverage, the cloud data flows. You can also use mirroring functions. You can also leverage Spark notebooks, yeah, and you can also leverage shortcuts if you're directly connecting data from SharePoint as well. Now, to prepare all this data that you want to ingest, you need to have specific knowledge about it. That's where, if you're working with pipelines, you need to have understanding of PySpark. And also, because you're bringing data from SQL Server and you want to write SQL queries on it, there is also where you can leverage PySpark SQL on top of it. Now, once you prepare all this data, you need to have a data that you have to store somewhere. Now, this is where the storing capabilities of Microsoft Fabric comes into play, where you have the bronze layer, which is much more a copy of the raw layer where you can ingest data in. Once you have the data as is from your source system stored into Microsoft Fabric in the first layer, which is bronze, you can then go ahead and create a lot of transformation on it. So there could be level 1, level 2 transformations. Now, what level 1, level 2 transformations are? So level 1 would be, if I'm having specific columns which are, not consistent enough, I can set up naming conventions and I can rename those particular columns to a lowercase, or I can have underscores instead of spaces. That's where Lakehouse Delta Parkway plays a very important role. It doesn't like spaces in between. It would prefer underscores. So that's where you can bring that to a structure. Level 2 transformations, where I can join multiple tables and create intermediate staging tables or intermediate tables on top of which would be, rather than further, I can push it down to the goal layer, which is much more of a curated, aggregated data that I can further let the users consume it. Now, consumption from Microsoft Fabric can happen via two different layers. One is your SQL endpoint, and other is your semantic models in Power BI. So semantic model in Power BI would be helped for you to create Power BI reports. You can use a semantic model to also chat with your data. You can leverage the semantic models also via REST APIs, and consume it further on embedding as well. You can also use Power BI for the same thing. The other thing that I also wanted to speak about is, with the semantic model and SQL endpoints that you have in a lakehouse and a warehouse, you can also leverage Power BI, like the Microsoft Fabric data agents on top of it. That's where AI plays a very crucial or important role when it comes down to the transformation of your process. Now, authentication, generally it's done via Microsoft Enter. You can use service principals, and you can use MFAs to handle your authentication. Alerting is another new feature in Microsoft Fabric, where you can send out alerts, real-time alerts on what's happening on your data. You can send alerts via notifications via email. You can chat and you can provide that alerting on Teams. That's where data activator plays a very important role, as we did speak about Microsoft Purview and the governance. And one of the newest things that Microsoft Fabric already differs from what was already existing in Power BI is where you can do CI/CD, or continuous integration and continuous deployment. This is handled by Azure DevOps, and it's also handled by Git. So now, in this way, when you're publishing or working on Microsoft Fabric, you can have multiple teams collaborate within Git, and you can go and publish your codes, which you would be able to reuse, and you can publish it across multiple environments. So this will help you seamlessly transition your data from one environment to the other, for example from a dev environment to a test, and from test to prod, using Git. And this is a very useful feature. Fabric also provides deployment pipeline. So if you combine deployment pipelines with Azure DevOps, that's a very strong process that you have in terms of integration. And the Git or the DevOps in Fabric works in the similar way that you have in the standard Git process. You can set up your repositories, you can set up branches, you can set up your Azure DLP policies on DevOps that you want to cover, and that would be very helpful in terms of doing the CI/CD or Microsoft Fabric. Following next, this is a typical data flow where we have data coming in from siloed system. If you have CRP, financial systems, any external data sources, you bring it to the raw layer as an ingestion. You do the cleansing of data, and you bring it to the silver layer, which is much more data, which is transformations are done. Then you have the gold layer, which is curated for business layer, and you have the consumption layer. And at the bottom you have the data agents and GenAI assistants that can sit on top of this data, including Copilot Studio, which would basically connect at each layer of your data if you want to do any analysis on your on the data that you're trying to explore. So exploratory analysis is also something that Microsoft Fabric will help you. Now, there are a lot of techniques when you want to ingest data in Microsoft Fabric. So one basic technique that everybody tends to follow is, if you have an on-premises databases that you want to bring into Microsoft Fabric, you can leverage copy jobs. So copy jobs basically will help you just to select your tables to the mapping and directly mirror the data, copy the data over into Microsoft Fabric into one lake. You can have a destination set up to a one lake, sorry, not the one lake, or it is the data warehouse or a data lakehouse. Generally preferred because it's the bronze layer. Generally a lakehouse is preferred. If you're using data, if you want to bring data coming in from Snowflake or Databricks Unity Catalog, you can definitely, or Cosmos database in that case, you can definitely go and leverage the mirroring feature within Microsoft Fabric, where it helps you to mirror your database as is. Apart from that, when you're initially working on Microsoft Fabric, there is also another way of, you can manually upload the files. You can go and upload a specific file, and you can automatically convert that file to a table. So manual upload is also possible. A lot of times, instead of you going and storing data on SharePoint, you can just do a manual upload there as well. Or if you have a SharePoint, you can also go and do a shortcut directly to get the data into Microsoft Fabric. Data flows Gen 2. This is pretty much, if you are aware about the Power BI ecosystem, we have something that's called Power Query, and what it does is it imports the data to keep your data consistent throughout it, and you can have a lot of transformations done within that. So data flow Gen 2 is the similar thing we have in Fabric, where you can define, automate, and schedule your data processing. You have the most standard ingestion process, which is a Fabric data pipeline. This is much more when you want to work on with very large data sets, you want to do custom iterations, you want to do custom transformations. That's where you can design and automate a multi-step ETL process in Microsoft Fabric data platform, data pipelines. And to handle all of the data pipelines, you obviously need PySpark notebooks to perform advanced data cleaning, filtering, transformations directly in Microsoft Fabric. Next, now what I'll do is I'll just quickly show you a demo on what Microsoft Fabric looks like, and I'm going to switch over to Fabric. So, Toral, let me know if you can see my screen. Just give me a second.
Sure, Prathamesh. Perfect. We can see your screen.
Sorry, Toral, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
I just put on the wrong window. Here. Yeah, here we go.
Perfect. We can
All
see your
right.
screen, Prathamesh. Yeah.
Great. Now, talking more in terms of how Fabric works, what Fabric really is. So this is how, when you're into Microsoft Fabric, this is how Microsoft Fabric homepage looks like. You have a lot of options here where you can, create a new workspace. You can do basic data analysis. You can also learn about what Fabric is about. There's a lot of tutorials here in terms of ingesting data, building lakehouse, how to build a real-time intelligence solutions. You have a quick access pane if you are into Fabric. What is the things that you accessed? Uh, on the left hand side, you have the workspaces, which is nothing but you can create your individual workspaces or individual department spaces or hubs where you can start ingesting or ingesting your data, creating your reports and so on. You have the one lake catalog, which showcases you everything that you have in the Microsoft Fabric, where you can see all the items that you have. You have the workspaces that you have and with all the data types. You can go and filter by reports. I can just go and check for my reports or dashboards that I have. So I can go and check on a report and it'll show me what are the reports that is existing in my system. I can go and check on the data that I have. I can just look at a lake house and it'll give me all the lake houses that are present in the ecosystem. So this gives you a comprehensive idea of what is available within your ecosystem. The monitoring section is where you can go and monitor your jobs, which I'll showcase it to you once I start. Once the jobs are, I'll show you the jobs. Real-time intelligence, where you can go and create your data streams. You can connect your data source, and you can go and do real-time events. You can do one lake events as well. For example, if I want to go ahead and ingest a real-time data of what's happening on my pipeline, I can go and do a real-time event mapping as well. Then you have any reports or regions that you opened, you can see it here, and any workspaces that you have. Now, you also have two sections here. You have the Fabric and you have Power BI. So if you are only working on Power BI, you have the Power BI session where everything from Fabric will go off. So if you go and see the workspaces, you'll have everything specific to Power BI. But the moment you go to Fabric, you will be able to create all the new items, new workspace. Now, one of the most important things that you have in the workspaces is you have the capacities. So if you look where if you have a Fabric capacity assigned, you will see a Fabric content as a premium icon here. So that's where you can, if you are leveraging Fabric, you can obviously start with a trial version, but it is also advisable to leverage the Microsoft Fabric, because now within the Fabric tendency, you are now able to leverage Copilot and so on. So now let's go into a quick demo of how what are the different data flows, different options in Microsoft Fabric. So the one of the things that you have in Microsoft Fabric is where you can create a task flow. So there are a lot of task flows that you can create. So you have data in terms of getting data, mirroring data, storing data, analyzing, preparing distribution of data, and you also create connectors around it. So what I've done for this demo purposes is where I've created an entire end-to-end flow where I am using my data flows and pipelines to get data. I'm using notebooks to prepare data. I'm using lakehouses and warehouses to store data. I'm using a Power BI report to store this data, and I'm distributing data via agent. So within the workspace itself, I'm easily able to understand what particular workloads in Fabric I have used and what tasks or what areas they are aligned to. So starting with the very first one, we have the data flows. So data flows is, as I mentioned about, this is a data flow generation tool where I can easily go ahead and fetch data. I can leverage data to copy files. I can also leverage data to create transformations. So if you look on the screen, I've got the data here from multiple tables, but I have used a merge transformations. And within the merge transformation, it really doesn't matter for me where I'm getting the data from. It can also be an external data source, but it can also be an internal Fabric lakehouse that I have, where here I have leveraged data from Microsoft Fabric. So if I go to the source, it'll give me, I have customer number, customer sales table that I fetched in. I've merged these queries by doing a basic join. So I can go and just join here data, left outer, right outer, and so on. And I can just provide it a destination where I want to go and destination. I can also go and provide a methodology where I want to do a destination, whether I want to increment this data on the basis of primary key, or I can go and do a data on the append. So I can go and set the stage here. So I can say the replace method is the update method is replace. So I'm going to replace everything. And once I publish a data flow, my data flow is going to be merging data and pushing data to the warehouse. So that's on the data flows. Now I also have if I go back to my get data, I also data pipeline. So similar to data flows, I can also leverage pipelines to do the same job. I can go and create activity. I can use a copy data assistance to create a activity. I can practice with sample data. So if you are not aware how to create a pipeline, you also have templates. So this templates will help you easily understand how we want to do. So if I want to bulk copy from a database, I want to copy data from a lakehouse or a warehouse, I want to do it from a SQL database. So there are pre-built templates available within Microsoft Fabric without leveraging anything. So I can just select a particular template and I click on next, and it'll give me a connection. It'll ask me to set up a connection, and with the connection I can go and set to further uh, movement on this file. So it'll automatically create the files for me, and I can then go ahead and bring the data in. So this is more in terms of how you want to copy your data together within Microsoft Fabric. Now coming back to the prepare data, I can leverage notebooks. So the reason I wanted to bring out notebooks in here was you can write your PySpark scripts within the notebook. I can create a PySpark script, but here what I can also do is I can go ahead and just turn a standard session, and I can also leverage Copilot. So this is the place where now things starts getting more easier for you, or if you want to leverage AI on top of it. So I can just mention that, can you help me create a create a bring in data from local files, bring data from local files to Lakehouse, and it'll work on it. Now this will help me, or it will help me create a code that I can then later on reuse and modify to create my connection from local files to Lakehouse. So it takes a while initially when the session started, and let's give it a minute. So if you look at this, it has generated a proper code. If I have the data, so I can go ahead and use this data. So it will give me what is the file path that I have. I can read the data set, I can use this code, I can copy this code, or I can just insert the code directly, and the code inserted to the notebook. So I can go ahead and definitely insert the code here, and I can then go and play around. So this makes it very easy for me to rather than writing a step-by-step process, I can definitely go and leverage Copilot on that. Now coming back to the storage layer, so where I'm in the workspace, I can go and store data. So I have a lake house which hosts the files. So if I go and quickly switch over to the file section, so within the files I can go and put in you know multiple CSV files. I can take the CSV file and directly upload these files again. So I can just take the synthetic CSV file and I can just load to a new table, and it will go ahead and just load the files directly into a table. So this is the place where a Fabric makes it a lot easier for you to go ahead and load data into from files to tables. You can also store this data into Lakehouse. So if you look at this, I have successfully created a table, and I have a table here, and I can just go and look at this into Delta tables. The other thing that I have is where you can also use a warehouse. So from a Lakehouse, you can go ahead and quickly transition to a warehouse, and within the warehouse, you can have data which is much more aggregated. So here I have the table stored in into the gold, and this data is much more in terms of data which is much more aggregated in terms of transactions, product, and so on. And what I can do on top of this is I can quickly go and create a Power BI report. So Power BI reports can be directly used by the data sets as well. I can go ahead and open up a Power BI report. So what I've done here is in a visualization. I have a sales report which sits on the same data frame. And this is a very natural, it's a very basic report that generated from Copilot. It has just a quick summary of the sales by region, by quantity. And this is where we are leveraging the capability of direct lake within Microsoft Fabric. So with use of Copilot, I can go ahead and create narratives on the data. I can also have graphs that is present, and I can also go ahead and just have a standard design by standard graphs. So further to that, again I can leverage AI on top of it. I can leverage Copilot within Microsoft Power BI within Fabric, and I can ask give me executive summary about this particular report. So the Copilot will basically go ahead and access the data behind the particular report, and I should be able to access. Now one point that I want to make here is when you're using Copilot, Copilot is now as a part of Fabric capacity is available for from the lowest tier, which is F2, to the highest tier. So now you can leverage Copilot within if you're procuring Fabric, and your users can directly go and interact with the Copilot on the reports that you have. So now if you see here, you have all the total sales and the sales and orders, all the insights around the data. And this is where you can go and say, I have this found this response good, it's good. and it will keep on improvising. So the more you start working on Copilot, the more accurate it can be. So that's how you can leverage Copilot within Microsoft Fabric. The next new thing that I want to talk to you about is the data agents. So where I'm going to distribute data in form of an agent to the users. Now the agent works on two types, two different areas. So I can use my agent to kind of work with the data that I have. So I can just go on to the Fabric demo and let me open up the sales agent. Just filter it out and I come to the AI agent. So what data agents do is it can talk to your semantic models as well in Power BI, but it can also go and talk to your lake houses and warehouses. Now, for this demo purposes, I have done an agent which talks to all three. So as of now, the data agent can work on 5 different sources at a time. So I have a lakehouse, I have a warehouse, which is the gold layer, and I have a semantic model. So what I've done here is I can go and instruct the AI to mention that, okay, you are a sales agent, you want to provide with the answers in a table. And I have mentioned that, sales is the sum of quantity, sales is the sum of total price, quantity is the sum of total quantity, unit prices, and customers are the listing count of the customers and so on. So I can go and ask the sales agent, I can just unselect this and I can say, okay, can you look at my gold warehouse? And I just want to say that what is the total sales and for top 10 customers, and I can just go ahead and hit a query to the agent. So what it will do is it will first go ahead and understand the data that is present in the gold layer, gold aggregated curated layer, and based on that it will go ahead and give me the output. So let's give it a minute for the output to come. Now, if you see, it gave me the top 10 customers with their total sales. Now, this becomes very tricky if I want to create a top 10 visualization Power BI or if I want to write a top 10 query. Now, the way it worked out was it did two particular steps. So it analyzed the semantic model that we had, the gold layer. Now, and in the gold warehouse, so it come down to the gold warehouse, it looked at this particular SQL and it created a SQL statement. Now, I can take the SQL statement and I can go back to my warehouse and I can also do a query onto this warehouse. So I can just go ahead and I can write a new query. I just come here and just put a new SQL query. Instead of select top 100, I just take everything. I just paste the same query here and I just take the first line out and I just run this. I'm able to get the same output. Now, the real help with data agents that you have here is where you can definitely go ahead and leverage agents to create your own queries. You can create sub queries. You can go ahead and create your own specific queries that you can access, and then on top of that you can use these views and you can send it across. The other way to do that also is you have semantic models where you can connect to the semantic models, and I can also ask the same question. So instead of the gold warehouse, I can now ask the agent, can you give me top 10 products by sales? And I'll ask the same question on the semantic model now. Now what here it will try to do is, this is specifically when I want to create any visualizations on Power BI. So I can go and query the semantic model that I have if I want to create a specific report or a specific visual and I'm not able to understand how the calculation is being done. So I can leverage data agents to ask query on the reporting as well. So now if you look at the data, so it just give me the, okay, it's just not working. Just give me a second. I'll have to refresh this and do that again. Let me just refresh the semantic model and I say that top 10 products by total sales. It's not selected, that's why. So I need to stop this. I'll select this again and I can just copy this over and put this in here. So it takes a while to do that, but this is the whole idea about we showing you the data agencies where the users can go ahead and query the data and it is able to do that. Okay, for some reason this is not working, but ideally it should give you a total sales. uh, so that's pretty much it on the Fabric demo. I will switch back again.
Thank you, Prathamesh, for this insightful demo. What you showed us was so powerful, and we would love to, for you and Dan to share some use cases with us. So, Dan and Prathamesh, take it from here.
Yes, yes. So we would like to discuss about a case study, and there are two things. I'm going to share my screen quickly, and let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Right. So the very first case study that we would like to talk about is more in terms of how we can, use chat and ERP data, how to use Microsoft Fabric and bring the data in to chat with the ERP data. And second is on the grant research. So Dan, do you want to shed some light on this?
Sure, yeah. So we were approached by I'd say a mid-sized manufacturing company, and one of the biggest challenges they had was giving access to their field personnel and their executives for sales information, as well as uh, inventory and associated product information. And so the environment was a SQL Server environment with on-prem views and we'll call it a database reporting tables.
Hmm.
And so one of the challenges was what's the best way to distribute this information? And we tried, and the client had tried a number of using pivot tables and other types of reporting. And so one of the ideas, especially with generative AI, is could we have a chat bot where we ask questions just like we
Hmm.
do with documents and unstructured data and get answers back from our structured SQL Server database? And it sounds easy on the surface, but the problem is when you're dealing with financial data, the answers have to be 100% right.
Hmm.
It can't be 90% right, 85% right. It has to be 100% right when you're asking financial information, whether it's commissions, whether it's sales volume, whether it's order history, whatever it is related to financials.
Hmm.
And we learned this when we worked in our, implementing Power BI and Tableau and those types of tools. So the way we solved this problem was we just created a prototype using just open source technology. And the first step was, what is the intent of the user? So when a user steps up and they ask a question, they may use slang, they may use language that's not in the database. And so they may ask questions that relate to products or customers that are not actually in the database. They may be using acronyms or something like that. So the first step was to understand what exactly is the user asking for, which is intent. And then the next step was, okay, well, now that we understand intent, repeat the question back to the user, get to them confirm it, then write the SQL.
Hmm.
And then the SQL will then, execute against the database and pull back the results. So that process alone exposed a lot of data integrity issues, which is why the value of a data platform where you can cleanse the data, you can organize it, you can even create an AI view on top of it that
Hmm.
has column names and information about the database tables that are easy to communicate to the AI. So when it's searching for customer sales for a particular region, it doesn't struggle to understand where to pull that data from. And that is the devil is in the details when building these types of apps. The data quality and prepping the data so the chatbot can write that SQL and can execute that SQL. That's where the time is spent. And so a tool like Fabric, what that brings is it gives you a platform to be able to do that data engineering effort referred to in the beginning of the session. That's why it's so critical. Um, and so where we are in that is we're at a prototype right now. And we're getting really good results, and we're getting that 100% accuracy, and we're just continuing to work through what are all the data scenarios that we're going to see. And so that would be the biggest takeaway for everybody on the call is if you endeavor into this chat with your ERP data, um, the devil is in the detail of how that data is described with the attributes within that data set and understanding how the users communicate and are asking questions. And the more time you spend on prepping that data and understanding that, the better results will be when the users actually ask a question. And that's the beauty of the semantic model in Power BI is you can do the prep. I know Prath, you'll probably say this, but you can do the prep in that semantic model. You can do you can make it AI ready so that when you're using a chatbot in, say, Power BI, or if you're using it in a Copilot tool, it doesn't matter what tool you're using. That data prep you have to spend time on that. So that's a use case that I want to share with everyone, and we are still in prototyping with that particular one, but we're getting great results by focusing on the user's needs and the data. So I'll pause there. Prath, do you want to say anything related
Oh
to how
yes,
we'll play with that?
yes, Dan. So you really made a very important point here, because the most important thing that you need to make your data ready, for consumption is, how you kind of, understand the use case of AI. That's very, very important for you to do that. Secondly, where Power BI or Power BI data agents, where we do the data profiling with the Microsoft Fabric, you really need to understand the crux of to expose what is really required rather than putting in everything in front of the end users. So that's where businesses are very the business should be very aligned on that. One other thing, where Fabric really helps is we did bring in data from finance in the ERP, we bring it to a structured state, and a lot of people will only look at the aggregations. I just want to get the aggregated data and just want to understand how my year over finance has been, whether what has been a change into my, if I put into a procurement module, is there how are the suppliers doing. So this things within Microsoft Fabric that you have, and rather than we reinventing the wheel every time of using the same creating a same notebook for same activities or for file ingestions, we can leverage the pre-built accelerators or pre-built templates that we have, and that will make the implementation a lot faster. So eventually, what we have also experienced in Microsoft Fabric is implementation time by reusing or creating accelerators that we have considerably reduced time by 30% in terms of ingestions. So that's really important in that piece, and the data profiling, of course, it plays a massive role when you want to make your data ready for AI.
All right. The second use case that I want to talk about is we had a healthcare consulting firm come to us and say, um, we want to understand what grants are available for our clients that operate in rural hospitals. And so they wanted to try to identify the grants and proactively reach out to the customers and say, we found money to fund particular projects.
Mhm.
And so it's an incredibly time consuming task. And so we wrote a prototype application that will basically do web searches. Some websites like grant.gov, and there's defined websites out there where grants are listed, but really would go out and would read and interpret and compare the grant requirements to an ideal grant, similar to an ideal customer profile, so an ideal grant profile. So where does a data platform fit in with that? Well, the first step is we need to define what the ideal grant profile is. And so that information has to be stored someplace. And then when we go out and we pull the grant information down every day, we pull the new grants they're made available from disparate sources all over. Grants.gov is just one, but there's state level websites. There's lots of different websites, and so we're pulling down the requirements every night, and then we're using an AI process, a Python application, to review the attributes of the grant and comparing it using OpenAI 4.1 to read and interpret and understand the grant requirements, and then compare it to the ideal grant profile, and then score it and say this is a high score, this is a low score. Well, that's all generating columns of information, or we'll call it data enrichment about grant information.
Hmm.
And so that's an example where we didn't really have that prior to Gen AI. Those types of requirements were that was a harder problem to solve than the way we can solve it now. So it's in prototype now, and essentially what it's doing is just scoring grants. And now we can look at the 9, 10s, and 8, 9s, and 10s because they're a higher profile for grants that we would be eligible for. And a human does not have to do any of that work. AI is going out, researching, pulling. We're pulling data back with a process. It's basically a workflow automation process, but we're pulling the data back, and then we're applying AI to the actual grant, and we're storing it, and that's the value of also having a data platform, because now over 1, 2, 3, 4 years, we can review and see all of the grants that we applied for, all the grants that we identified, and we can learn from that information as well. So I think this age of modern AI is really challenging us to think of new ways to use data, but it's another example of why a platform is so important.
Hmm. That's really a good research, work that you're doing upon in terms of, doing for grants, because I really understand the importance of that in healthcare. So it's really important for that. Yep. With this,
Great.
yes.
Well, Dan and Prathamesh, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And, just listening to you both talk, Microsoft Fabric paired with the right strategy can be a game changer, right? I mean, it's amazing where it's headed and what you can do with
Mhm.
that. So that's great. Thank you. I would actually like to move to Q&A.
Mhm.
Dan and Prathamesh, I have a few questions here. So, we talked about Microsoft data agents. So, is it ready for, is it a production ready application at this point of time?
Yeah, I can take that question. So here, Microsoft Fabric data agents are a preview only feature as of now, but but you can still go ahead and connect to the production data.
Okay. Okay, all right. And we talked, Prathamesh, you talked about data governance.
Mhm.
So, how does Microsoft Fabric handle data governance? Just if you can give, a high level overview
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
that.
Yes. So, specifically on the data governance, Microsoft has introduced uh, Microsoft Purview as a part of Microsoft Fabric on governance. Now, what Microsoft Purview does here is it helps you not only establish your data, you can basically go ahead and apply policies on the data as well. I can go ahead and endorse my data. Particularly around that endorsement is where if I want to share, for example, if I'm a business user and I'm from a department which is data science. So I'm not a specific guy who is really from the business or the operations team, but I still want to leverage the data and do some forecasting models, and I want to use that data. Now, without the need for me to copy that data within Microsoft Fabric and give it to the data scientist, I can go ahead and leverage the same, or I can endorse this data. Now, when I endorse this data for cross utilization, it from the governance perspective, I can go ahead and create a policy within Fabric under purview to say, okay, this particular data is also being cross shared with the data scientist guys. Rather than duplicating data, I'll have a full control of the data sitting in my organization is going to be used by how many people. That's one area on the governance. Second thing is also in terms of where I want to provide when I want to catalog my data. So cataloging is one of the crucial uh, areas where it also blends well in with data profiling. Data catalog is something that every organization is trying to achieve. But now with Microsoft Purview, you can easily achieve the data cataloging as well, specifically in terms of data lineage. One thing that Microsoft Purview also helps you understand is the lineage of the data. For example, I'm having multiple lake houses, warehouses. I don't know where this data is coming in from, what kind of source systems it's being connected to. So that's where Microsoft Purview will also help me understand the lineage of the data from the source to the destination. So these are the key 3 to 4 major areas where Microsoft is giving you Purview. And now Purview was initially offered separately outside of Microsoft Fabric, but now you have a Microsoft Purview under the governance section, which is also a preview feature in Microsoft Fabric. And you can go and enable that on, and you should be able to see what's happening with your data in the organization.
That's great. That's great to know, Prathamesh. And This question could be for Dan or Prathamesh, but we hear a lot about co-pilots across Microsoft products. So what is the difference, when we talk about co-pilots used across Microsoft products, what are the different types of co-pilots that we are looking at?
Right. So there are multiple co-pilots. So everything sits on AI, to be honest. So you have when you're talking about Microsoft Office 365 Copilot. Now this Copilot will help you write. If I'm talking about Microsoft Word or a PowerPoint Copilot, it will help me generate a specific slide from the content. I can go ahead and create uh, a Word document. Like in the Word document, I can add in the content. I can do that. Apart from that, within Copilot, I have, if I'm looking at Teams Copilot, which is much more of a productivity Copilot as well, I can go ahead and transcribe my meetings. It does it automatically. It summarizes things. It also during the meeting gives you certain notes of what the initial speakers has been saying about. It gives you a quick summary if you're late to the meeting for some chance. So it helps you that as well. So you have a Teams Copilot. Now, when it comes down to data copilots, you have the Power BI copilot within the Power BI service. So this helps you query your reports. It can help you not only just ask the questions on a natural language, but it can also help you to generate visualizations on top of it. So if I want to say, I want to create a bar graph for my total top 10 products by region. So it will automatically create a bar graph that for you as well. So this is where Copilot gets a little better, where it you can also go and create visualizations on top of it. There is also the auto create report functionality within Power BI, which automatically helps you connect your semantic model and create an automated report. uh, Example of that which I had shown in my demonstration as well. So auto create reports also helps with Copilot. So there's a Power BI Copilot. And now you have the data agents, which is nothing but again AI sitting on top of it, which connects to your structured data and you are able to generate queries. You can generate, DAX queries when you're working on Power BI. And then within Fabric, where we have Copilot, you can leverage that for the notebook. So those are the notebook Copilots where you can leverage, writing PySpark script from the notebooks. So these are the different copilots that you have in Microsoft Fabric, and these are easily accessible once you're in the ecosystem.
Great. No, a lot of new features and a lot to look forward to as Microsoft is continuously putting in innovations in their Microsoft Fabric platform. So absolutely. Well, I believe we are almost at time. Thank you, everybody, for your participation today. Thank you, Dan and Prathamesh, for sharing your insights. This session was fabulous, gave us a lot of insights, and I'm sure it did give, the attendees the tools and the inspiration to take the next step, right? So thank you once again. And to the attendees, please feel free to reach out to us for a free consultation. We would be happy to help you with your data modernization journey. Our emails are on the screen, so you can reach out to us. Thank you once again to all of you all for your participation, and have a great day. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks, Toral. Thanks, Dan.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.